Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. I'm Robbie Marcus, the MedTech analyst here. I'm very happy to have Medtronic presenting this morning, and warm welcome to Omar Ishrak, the chairman and CEO. Omar.
Thanks, Robbie. And I'm only chairman and CEO for the next 3 months, I think. But it's great to be here and talk to you. This is going to be my last presentation at JP Morgan, but it's been a real pleasure talking to this group and everything that we've learned from you. But the most important thing is that I remain as excited as ever about Medtronic and where it can go in the future, and I'd love to share where we stand today and why I'm so excited about it. First, the forward-looking statements. This is on our website, so please take a look if you need to, but I'm going to move on. This is a background on Medtronic, and I think most of you know this, but really I want to draw your attention to two of the most important numbers on this page. The first is the 75 million lives that have been improved in FY19. We actually have made an impact to 75 million people in one calendar year, and that is a big number. And one of the things that I perhaps am most proud about my time at Medtronic is when I started, that number was close to 20 million a year. So we made a difference, and this is a yearly number. The second most important number on this page is the $2.3 billion we spend in R&D. And that's a number we want to grow, and that's driven now through high productivity in R&D, which has created, as I'll talk about in a few minutes, the broadest and most robust and deepest pipeline that Medtronic has ever had. And so those are the two biggest things, and then the rest, you can see. We've got 90,000 employees, we're $30.6 billion in revenue, we're in 150 countries and so on, but that's really, if you want to think about Medtronic, think of those two things. And then the revenue and all that stuff follows in the earnings. Now, I will talk today about our pipeline a lot, and because I do think that this company is in a stage where it can really go to the next level of sustainable growth driven by product innovation, and product innovation that's meaningful, and that makes a difference to patients everywhere in the world in a way that we think that the payment mechanisms and so on will follow, because many of these innovations are that disruptive and new markets are being created, and I'll talk quite a bit about that. In addition to that, we've worked hard to create a broad presence in emerging markets. And as these products come out, the U.S. or the developed world aren't the only places where there are patients. In fact, there are more patients in emerging markets. And the presence that we've got in emerging markets, we think, give us an acceleration of that growth that we get simply from the new product introduction. And on top of that, the company today is positioned financially in a strong position with strong free cash flow conversion, and I'll talk about how we're doing capital allocation. And our commitment here is that we were targeting an 8% EPS growth over a planning period, but equally importantly, that number grows as in terms of total shareholder return when you add in the dividend as well. So we need to execute, obviously, but I can tell you that we've started to build a track record of consistent execution, and we intend to continue that. And that, layered onto the best and strongest pipeline we've ever had, will create a platform in which this company will go to the next level of performance. I've got absolutely no doubt. So with that, let me talk about innovation and how we think about innovation. Now, the first row over here talks about continuous innovation, and continuous innovation is essentially pretty unique to MedTech in general. Because MedTech, we create markets, as I'll talk to in a minute. But then once we create a device that creates a brand new market, then that device continues to enhance over time through yearly or periodic modifications that are based on user input, our own knowledge, our own technology growth, and that's something that continuously happens and something that we can never forget. And that is actually the bulk of the products that come out, because these are base products that's been created, initial clinical trials have been done, and then continuous innovation being done on a rapid basis. Now, that's not without any meaning, in the sense that each of those innovative products have to have demonstrated clinical and economic value. And in MedTech, we can actually prove that. And so that really differentiates the MedTech industry from other healthcare sort of technology areas, because it is something that goes on. And then we create new markets. And here you can see a list, everything from renal denervation to a fully implantable LVAD, which we're working on. All of these, you can imagine, without me talking too much about it, will create brand new markets. Will provide therapies to patients today where those patients have no hope, have no other avenue of treatment, and or a much worse avenue of treatment. And these will create new markets, and once we create the new markets, then they will go into a cycle of market expansion, and they'll go into a cycle of continuous innovation. And once that period goes on, then we disrupt. And there's no better example of that than the micro product, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, which has disrupted the pacemaker itself, sort of decades after it was initially launched. And it went through a period of market expansion and continuous innovation. But there's a whole series of disruptive products and platforms that's in our pipeline that I'll talk to in a minute. So that's the way in which, we think about innovation. Continuous innovation, inventing new markets, and then eventually, after a period of continuous innovation, disrupting those markets with new technology. And you can see from this statement why that R&D spend is so important for us. An R&D spend which is then geared towards making a real difference in patients. So with that, let me go on to our robust pipeline, and I won't spend too much time on this chart, but you can see why I say it's a broad and deep pipeline. We have products that are driving growth now, which have been recently launched. We have products across our different groups that will launch in the coming quarters and within the next fiscal year or so. And then there's products which are beyond that, well beyond that. So you can expect from us a pipeline of products which is not temporary. This is going to go on over multiple years. So let me start with a few clear examples. And the TAVR, which is the transcatheter aortic valve replacement device, is an interesting example because in my time at Medtronic, I've seen this product being launched and created a market and being one of the biggest growth vehicles for us in the industry. And I've seen this product being initially launched and then through a period of continuous innovation get better over time and expand into new markets. The low risk is the latest one, and now we're looking at bicuspid data at the ACC in March, which will further expand this market. And at the same time, we're doing continuous innovation like the Evolut Pro Plus, for example, which is launching now. In addition to that, in the space, we're also working on a transcatheter mitral valve replacement product, which will address an even bigger market. And that product now is in the middle of clinical trials. The Apollo trial is for a transapical approach on which we've done, significant numbers of patients, and we're pretty excited about the results. But we're also working on a transfemoral approach, and that'll soon be integrated into this trial. So this is something that we think we're leading in, and something that'll also create a parallel market which is even bigger than the aortic valve market, which we started only a few years ago. Moving on. Spine is a great story for us. A business which is now growing and a big growth driver for Medtronic. And that the story here is that the spinal implant integrated with our enabling technologies has moved the needle for us in that whole business. And enabling technologies, really the driver for that was a robot. But once we put the robot in, which had the Mazor robot, which has acceptance, once we then integrated that with our stealth navigation system, and we started to use that in conjunction with our O-arm, and we have a pipeline through which this product will get refined with further and further integration. That together with the continued innovation in our implants, things like the Titan interbody implant, which we just launched, which is inorganic, but that'll be an organic growth driver in the future. These things together will give us a real leadership position, and more than leadership, a growth position in the spinal market, including enabling technologies. So we're really excited about this, and I'm really thrilled to see what has happened to this business, which at one time was not growing and now is one of our key growth drivers. And then the success of the Mazor robot is also something that we're pretty proud about. Moving to robots more. We come to surgical robotics in general surgery. And we have now talked about in a fair amount of depth about this robot that we're going to be launching, general surgery robot, which we'll be launching shortly. And we're working this. The progress on this product is going very well. Our timelines for release will depend on approvals, and those approvals, as we stated before, first the CE mark and then the FDA approval, and we're going to be submitting them in the first quarter of next fiscal year. In terms of the first clinical installation, that's going well okay. There may be a slight delay in that and may move into the first quarter as opposed to the second half of this year. But it's not going to affect the timeline for regulatory approvals, both CE mark and FDA mark. But more important than that, we're excited about what kind of financial difference this product, revenue contribution this product will make both to MITG as well as to Medtronic as a whole. And you're talking about 250 basis points of incremental growth for MITG based on this product. This is purely incremental over what we have today, and this MITG is already running at about 5% growth. So this is incremental on top of that. That's going to happen within the next 2 to 3 years. And then that is going to have an impact in Medtronic. But we don't stop there. Our vision of robotics is that it's going to change general surgery. And this is only the launching platform for us. And I know that there's big competitors out there. This market is already created, but it's not even close to what it can be. And we, with our overall infrastructure and presence, are in a great position to enter this market, to drive this market, and to convert general surgery into robotic procedures in the developed markets as well as emerging markets. And this product is our launch point of that, and we're very close to launching this, and one that we're really excited about. Then we move to diabetes, and we've got to do some work in diabetes. But in the pump area, in the closed loop system, this is a product, this is a market that essentially we created 2 or 3 years ago through the launch of the closed loop system. There's competitors now, and we've got some work to do here. But we're really excited about the 780G, which is again very close to its launch phase. The 780G is a product which will have an advanced closed loop algorithm, one that has better time and range than what we have today, approaching 80% in adult feasibility studies. It'll target 100. Your blood glucose levels of about 100 on average, both day and night. Today's sort of state of the art, ours is 120. General market is more like 160. So in general performance for the user, this will be better. But in addition to that, it'll have a feature set that'll be more forgiving to user behaviors. We're actually going to be presenting at the ATTD use case studies under extreme conditions. And extreme conditions means what happens when the patient misses a meal bolus. And how does this product react to that? And we've got some pretty good data to share there. So it's going to be more forgiving. And that'll make a big difference to these patients. And in addition to that, we'll have the full pivotal trial data at the ADA in June. The regulatory timelines are all on track. The CE mark has been submitted. The FDA submission is forthcoming. And this is, again, a product that's forthcoming and will move the needle for us in diabetes. Now, here's another one that's going to disrupt the market. This is brain sensing and brain modulation. And what we have here is a first DBS device, which actually has been launched in Europe already, which actually senses signals from the brain. And using those signals, the stimulation patterns can then be adjusted, eventually becoming a complete closed-loop system with better care for these patients. In addition to that, this will have full 3T full-body MRI compatibility. It has improved battery longevity. And again, as perhaps you heard just last week, we received the CE mark. We'll do our first patient on this product, I think this week, and we're expecting US FDA approval in the spring. So this is another product which we're really excited about, which will disrupt the market. No one's done brain sensing before. And that is new information to the doctors. And then using that information, we will change the stimulation patterns, which will take time for us to fully understand this, but one that we know will move the needle for patients in this market and make their care better and the standard of care go up. Equally exciting, another area that we're seeing disruption is in the area of pelvic health. And one that I think you saw a press release this morning, many of you have seen. We've just got CE mark clearance for the InterStim Micro, which is a 3 cc device, an 80% reduction over the bigger can that's standard today. And it's one that's based on rechargeable technology. And it's something that we're really excited about, something that will contribute to disrupting this market. But in addition, there's a pool of patients who will still use the larger device, the InterStim 2 device, which will now have full 3T full body MRI compatibility. That's a primary cell device, doesn't require recharging. And this market is going to break up into patients who will put up with recharging and patients who will want a primary cell device with no need for recharging. And we will have both of those areas covered with new products which will be leading edge in this marketplace. Moving on to the product that I'm perhaps most proud of during my tenure at Medtronic and in this whole list. Like I mentioned earlier, Medtronic was started back in late 1950s with the launch of the first battery-powered pacemaker. That was the invention of a market. That market's gone through a series of new continuous innovation, some level of disruption of the implantable device, and as you all know, technology has changed a lot since 1960. And here we are in the mid-2000s, in between about 3 or 4 years ago, around 2014-15, we introduced the Micra, which disrupted that market. Organically, we developed this, and one that I'm truly proud of. Now, the Micra VR, which we launched 3 or 4 years ago, only addresses 15% of the patient pool, of the pacemaker patient pool. With the launch of the Micra VR, with the launch of the Micra AV, we're gonna address 55% of that patient pool, and one that we're really excited about. We expect FDA approval, forthcoming here by the end of this fiscal year, and this product's going to make a big difference to the care of these patients. Remember, when you put a Micra in, the patient leaves the room and they're cured. There's nothing else. There's no wound to look after. There's nothing else. They feel better straight away and they're cured. That's a big deal. And that's going to affect patients. It's got good reimbursement coverage and all of that, and we think it'll really help us with our growth profile as well in a meaningful way. Atrial fibrillation is another area which we've built our business around cryoablation, which is for paroxysmal AF. In the persistent AF area, we've had only a small presence, but we have a pipeline now that's going to start to address that area. And the Diamond Temp product that we're going to be releasing very soon, and we already have CE mark, and we'll launch in Europe this fiscal year later, and then we expect US FDA approval next fiscal year. But this is a product that has a real-time irrigated catheter. It uses closed-loop temperature control, and it will change the way in which RF ablation is done. And we have a pipeline of other technologies in the area of RF ablation, which we'll share with you in the future. But this is a market we intend to win in. And then we have renal denervation. Again, a market that we have to create. An area that we started about 10 years ago, and we haven't given up. This hasn't been easy. We've been through one series of trials which had some issues. We stayed, and we improved it. And now we're in the throes of thinking about launching this new product, which will be used for hypertension treatment for both on-med and off-med patients. There's a potential for a presentation of a pivotal trial for these patients at the ACC in March. It depends on the Bayesian analysis, but one that we're looking forward to. So this is, again, future. This is not next fiscal year, but beyond that, a future pipeline market creator that we're really excited about. So with that, you've heard the pipeline. And I could go on. I could spend the next hour here talking about those products. And each one is either significant continuous innovation, creating new markets, or disrupting ones. And you can see that this pipeline is full, and this pipeline covers multiple years and is the basis to take this company's growth profile to the next level. That's where we're going to go. But in addition to that, our work in emerging markets gives us a basic platform which we can live on. Emerging markets is now about 16% of our total revenue. We've grown in double digits for emerging markets. This chart shows till FY15, but we can go back another 5 years ahead of that, and we've still grown at double digits every year. So emerging markets on a constant currency basis, we've grown at double digits, and one that because of our breadth, our direct distribution presence that we're increasing, we know we can continue. And increasingly now in certain countries, we are also doing local manufacturing, local engineering, and catering to those physicians, because there'll be more emerging market physicians at some point than developed market physicians, and they will have their needs. And we need to be local and work with them to develop products that they're comfortable with and they will pursue. So emerging markets is another place that's important for us, and you can see how we're progressing there. Double-digit growth on a consistent basis, year after year, in fact, quarter after quarter. Now let's get to the financial part of this presentation. First, free cash flow. And free cash flow is one that, we took on a few years ago because we were not performing well. And if you want, that was one of my disappointments in my tenure as CEO that, we let this thing happen. But we fixed it. We fixed it, and now we've got, last year we had an 83% free cash flow conversion, above our peer average, and we're committed to providing at least an 80% free cash flow conversion. and we expect to do this well. And the reason this has happened is because we've now got a much more granular focus on what it takes to deliver free cash flow, a management of working capital, of inventory and receivables in particular, managing one-time items, which will happen. In our non-GAAP earnings, you don't see one-time items. Well, in free cash flow, you do. Currency. And we pay attention to all of that in a way that we can still provide that 80% conversion ratio on a consistent basis. Most important of all, we've got a total Medtronic focus, and this is the one metric that every single employee in Medtronic, over 90,000 employees, gets a financial reward based on the performance of our free cash flow. So every employee in Medtronic gets rewarded by free cash flow. That's how important we think it is, and that's how we think that everybody needs to play a role for us to deliver these numbers, because there's no hiding here. This is the true cash flow that we generate, and one that we're committed to delivering on, and one that we're truly excited about. Now, when you generate all this free cash flow, then you've got to pay attention to your capital allocation. And we've got, a lot of ability right now to reinvest that free cash flow in the right areas. The most important investment that we make, as I've said now several times, is our organic reinvestment in R&D. That creates this pipeline, that grows this pipeline, and it's the highest return that we have of any investment that we make. But, we aren't going to invent everything. No matter how good we are, there are more engineers outside of Medtronic than inside Medtronic. And they will invent things. And we need to be aware of that and have a methodology through which we can acquire. And these tuck-in M&As where we bring in technologies that others have created, and then we use our scale and our overall presence to bring those to market, and they become growth drivers, organic growth drivers eventually, is our strategy in M&A, and that has an increasing focus right now, and one that you're beginning to see us, just early this week, last week we talked about Stimgenics in the pain management area. There are other such. We talked about Titan in the spinal area. These types of tuck-in M&As will happen at increasing frequency as we start to use the free cash flow that we've generated and the capabilities that we have. Our dividend growth is something that you can depend on. That's in line with our earnings growth, with a dividend payout ratio of 40%, and you can depend on that. And this company is strong enough that through our free cash flow generation, we can do that. That enhances our return, our total shareholder return. And then opportunistically, when there is free cash flow available and there aren't appropriate places to spend it in M&A, we will do share buybacks. Through all of this, we're targeting an ROIC of 13%. ROIC is an important variable and important metric, and you'll see that in a few minutes. That's part of our compensation as well. So it's something that we look at. Now, I'll spend a few minutes on this chart. This is our history of our dividend payouts. We've got a 42-year history, and we're a S&P 500 dividend aristocrat, and one that we're pretty proud of. And you can expect maintenance of this dividend and a 40% payout ratio over time. We've got enough ability to do that, and you can be assured of that. That then results in a company that's targeting 8% EPS growth over the planning, adjusted EPS growth over the planning period. And then that, together with the dividend, results in a double-digit total shareholder return. So here's a company that's $30.6 billion, at scale, serving patients, growing, using technology to grow, taking growth to the next level, and delivering this kind of return, and one that you can depend on at that scale. And you'll hear more about that in the coming quarters and in our Investor Day presentation later this year. The management team is compensated in a way that is friendly to our shareholders, and we continue to look at this and we modify and tweak this in a way that it's shareholder sensitive and friendly. Some of the recent additions is the addition of the free cash flow component and the total shareholder return component in the long-term performance plan. And again, free cash flow goes well beyond management. Every employee gets that. But for management, this is the breakdown of compensation. So in summary, look, I couldn't be more excited about this company, about where we stand. I hope I've conveyed that to you, my own excitement, and more than excitement, why I'm excited. I'm equally excited, and perhaps most of all, with the succession process that we have in place here. Jeff Martha, who's in the audience here, he's going to take over as CEO starting in the new fiscal year. I'll remain as executive chairman, but really this is going to be Jeff's company. And Jeff is someone that I'm going to continue to support, but I am just excited about where this company is going to go. The pipeline is full. We know how to execute. We generate cash flow. We know how to invest that. This is going to be a company that makes a difference to patients around the world and will continue to do so based on the technology invention that we can make. Thank you all very much for your attention here today, and thank you very much for your support over the last 10 years. Thank you.